All right, Nuggets fans, welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at number 38 and Bet on the Line. I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter. Happy Memorial Day to those who celebrate, to those who didn't in the United States. Happy Monday off. Really appreciate everybody for hopping in here. This is going to be the first podcast of the week. Today's Monday night, obviously. Wednesday night, I will do another. Friday night, I will do another. I'm going to try to go live at about 9 p.m. going forward. I think that's the target time for my audience and just what makes sense for this kind of conversation going forward. I want to get into a proper rotation so people know when I'm going to be live, get to interact with me consistently. Hopefully you enjoy it. This particular week will kick off the major offseason content. Last week was kind of a, hey, what the hell happened? That season ended abruptly. How the hell do you recover from here? This week, it's more about going into the actual season and review stuff. And I asked people online, I said, hey, what do you want to see from me in terms of covering Denver and covering what they need from an internal perspective or an external perspective? And so I'm going to give you both. This week is about the internal. This week is about how can the Nuggets roster get better. Next week will be how can the Nuggets improve the roster. We'll do both. I think both are very important. Obviously, the Nuggets are strapped for cash, so it's going to be pretty tough for them to figure out how they can best sort of figure out how to improve their roster and bounce back and become a championship caliber team once again, because there is a decay of life for every championship team once they win the title. And Denver's kind of in that cycle now. If you're familiar with half-lives in the NBA, Denver's approaching their half-life. All the Nuggets guys are in their primes. All of the Nuggets guys are very expensive. And this is going to be a very difficult time to reset, to retool. The Nuggets are going to have to be very diligent, and some tough decisions might have to be made. So we'll get into all of it. It's going to be very interesting. Today will be a focus on Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. We'll do Jokic in the first segment, Murray and Porter in the second segment, and then some fundamental questions about the three together in the third segment. Should be a good conversation. But first, I want to mention the sponsor of today's podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Bet Online, your number one source in the NBA and NHL playoffs this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to their online casino and get in on the action with a game of blackjack or poker, or online unwind with a bunch of different slot games, over 150 types of slot games if you choose. Head to their website today to get in on the action. Don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, the game starts here. All right, let's get into this. Let's talk about Nikola Jokic. This is going to be very, very, very interesting. Happy to see folks in here. CT, what's up, CT? We got to talk when to talk draft, because CT, I'm going to have you on again to talk about the NBA draft, it'll be a little bit more of a comprehensive conversation than we had last year at around this time. But you want to come on the podcast again and join the draft discussion? I'll make sure to set something up with you before the draft comes about. Let's get to Jokic. How I'm going to frame each of these conversations about each of these players. 1, what happened? 2, where can this player get better? And 3, where can they go from here? Jokic is a little bit different because he is obviously like the best player in the world. He's the center of everything the Nuggets do. So I'm going to try to frame this in a little bit of a different way. Number 1, what happened? Well, MV3 happened. Jokic was incredible during the regular season. Incredible numbers, 79 games played, best player in the world, impacts everything the Nuggets are doing, would absolutely be a tremendous option for Denver at any point during the season. Defeated Anthony Davis and the Lakers, was extremely consistent. And then in the second round, he was up and down. He had his best game of his life, perhaps, in game 5, was unbelievable in that game. Game 4, he was great. Game 3 kind of worked his way back into it. Like kind of the inverse of what Murray did in games 3, 4, and 5. Jokic was solid, then great, then excellent in those 3 games. Game 6 was kind of a throwaway. Game 2 was kind of a throwaway. And then game 7, I think he gassed out just like everybody else. Not necessarily him that I think Nuggets fans should be worried about, obviously, for gassing out, but that is what happened. His three-point shot really deserted him when the team needed it to be around for the most. He took a bunch of threes in that series and did not shoot that well. His defense was also pretty bad in the playoffs through the first 7 games. That includes the 5 games against the Lakers and then the first 2 against the T-Wolves. He was better in the next 3. Some of that's confirmation bias because Denver won, but for the most part, he was much better. And then in the last 2 playoff games, he kind of faltered again. And that's like, it's not just on him, it's on everybody. But oftentimes for a team, the center is the last line of defense. The center is the guy that's supposed to clean up other people's mistakes. And Jokic can do that at times. Like he can get some steals, he can get in people's way. And the Nuggets only allowed 98 points in game 7. So it's not like they were crazy. But for the most part, I thought his defense waned in those last 2 games. And that really impacted him for sure. Where can Jokic, of all the players, where can Jokic get better? Because he does so much for the Nuggets already. Asking him to do more, like, I think it's fair. What is a reasonable even expectation for Nikola Jokic to get better? He's already at the peak of his powers. What can he do? Well, I think the first and foremost thing is the three-point shot. 26.4% from 3 in the playoffs, and that dropped to 22.9% against the T-Wolves. And one thing, like against the T-Wolves specifically, because of how much they sold out to protect the paint, to stop the Nuggets from getting the comfortable shots around the rim, the three-point shot was very, very important against them. And Jokic not being able to hit that was a big deal. Nobody's going to blame Joker for what he did. And like it's the series loss is obviously not on him, but everybody's culpable in some way, shape, or form. And that is where he can improve. I think he can have more defensive improvement in general, especially earlier in these games. Regular season, I understand that he's saving it at times, but even in the playoffs, you can see when he's trying to preserve fouls, he's trying to preserve energy. But when he does that, it is more impactful than when other players do that because he doesn't have the natural athleticism and ability to make up the difference with just like length and jumping ability and things like that. So he has to work and it's taxing. It's certainly a problem. So I think that finding more ways to get defense involved early on rather than saving it for later might actually help the Nuggets in ways. Like he's got to be in even better shape, and he's in great shape as it stands. But 79 games, carrying the load for an MVP caliber season, one where he actually won the MVP, like it's very clear that he absolutely needed to be better in some of those moments and be a little bit more athletic in some of those moments. The other thing is the long twos. People don't realize this because this kind of went under the radar, but Matt Moore pointed this out to me during, I think, the middle of the season, maybe the later portion of the season, like February, March. The long twos have been an issue. The first 8 years of Jokic's career, he's played 9. The first 8 years of his career, 46.9% on long twos from outside of the free throw line area to inside of the 3-point line. Nearly 47%. This year, he was down to 37%, a 10% drop off. And I noticed that a lot of that was often due to having to take late shot clock shots where you're often being forced into shots from in like less than 4 seconds, less than 3 seconds, and you're catching a grenade and you just got to throw something up there. That can't happen. He's got to find more opportunities to get better shots in those moments. And he's also got to find, like, he's just got to shoot better in those moments. He can't just go to a Sombor shuffle often in those times or a turnaround fadeaway. He's got to find a better shot. Like, he's usually so good at that. Find a better shot in those situations because those are playoff shots. The Nuggets needed those. They needed them in Game 7, and they kind of dried up. So, what is reasonable to expect from Nikola Jokic going forward? Heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? If you're the best player in the world, the most is asked of you. Nobody in the NBA is asked to do more than Nikola Jokic, and nobody in the NBA should be asked to do more than Nikola Jokic. As long as he wears that best player in the world title, he should be asked to do the most. And I do think that it's fair to hold him to that standard. Now, you understand that, look, if he only plays at the level of the second best player in the world or the fourth best player in the world, the Nuggets should still be able to win a championship. It can't be that he has to be so far and away the best player in the world that it's a problem. I think that guys like Luka Doncic and maybe Giannis, I guess, but mostly Luka, Luka's really the only guy who I think seriously challenges him for the best player in the world title. But Luka's coming. Like, he's playing extremely well, and they're now probably going to move on to their first NBA Finals in his career. So is this going to be a changing of the guard? Is Jokic going to continue to play at this level? Or because he just turned 29, is this the peak? Is this the end? I'm curious to see how he continues to evolve going forward and what this continues to look like, because I have no doubt that he's capable of doing more, capable of playing better in some situations, but I do think the Nuggets need to help him out in other ways. The other thing, I think this needs to be the last time that he goes for an MVP. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean him going for it. I mean the team going for it. Michael Malone going for it. The Nuggets campaigning for him and like putting him into positions where, oh yeah, he has to win the MVP. I mean, look at what he's doing. I think that the best thing for Joker going forward, for him to be the best player in the world when it matters, is for him to play 65 games, is for him to play fewer minutes, for him to not have to come back into games when Denver was up 25 and now they're only up 18. The Nuggets have to find ways to get rest. They have to be able to trust whoever their backup is, whoever the backup center is. They have not been able to trust anybody else. And as a result, his minutes have built up. Michael Malone knows it. The Nuggets organization knows it. It is time for them to put their money where their mouth is and find an actual option. Because Zeke Naji is not cutting it right now. DeAndre Jordan doesn't cut it. Aaron Gordon, putting those miles on him is a stupid idea too. Go get a backup center. And then Jokic will look like the best player in the world again. Shocker. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. I am very interested to see what the chat thinks of Michael Porter and Jamal. And I think that you'll be interested to hear what I have to say about him too. We'll be right back on Pickaxe and Roll. But first, I have to tell you about number 38, one of the sponsors of this podcast, one of the best bars in Denver. It's in the Rhino area up north of Ball Arena. I loved going out there. Lots of different places, lots of different spots to sit, cool environment. outdoor patio, brunch, mimosas. They've got awesome drinks for the evening. They've got so many beers on tap. You can get whatever you want to over at number 38. They get $15 pitchers. All you got to do is let them know that you came from Mile High Sports and that Ryan Blackburn sent you over there. Thank you so much for being a part of the family here. We'll be right back at Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we're back. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I fixed my hat. The hairline is not looking fantastic when I look like this, so I appreciate all the kindness as much as I could possibly get. I know I'll probably get clowned in the comments, but that's what comments are for, right? Thank you so much for tuning in. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, especially if you're new. Would love to continue to do this. As I mentioned at the top, going to podcast every Monday, every Wednesday, and every Friday live at around the same time, about 9 p.m. So let me know whether that time works for you and if you're able to tune in live. Would love to see you. All right. Jamal Murray. What happened? Where can he be better? What's next? What happened to Jamal Murray this year? Well, a lot of soft tissue injuries happened, and they interrupted his season to no end. Without fail, he could not get off the ground. 59 games played. He had close to the same scoring numbers, did improve as a passer, especially with Nikola Jokic on the floor, but the non-Jokic minutes remained an issue. Over at Mile High Sports, I wrote about this season for Jamal Murray, as well as for the Nuggets point guards. I gave Murray's season a C-. I debated between that and a D+. I think the points numbers and then the assist improvement, especially during the regular season, that kept it at a C- for me, as opposed to giving him a failing grade, because it felt wrong to give him a failing grade for, like, when you go back and look at the actual numbers of what happened. But one thing that really does stand out is that when Jokic and Murray were on the floor, the Nuggets put up a plus 15.4 net rating in 1,400 minutes. That's an incredible number. It really is. And yet, part of Murray's job is not just to be out there with Jokic. It's to be out there without Jokic and to prop up those minutes. In the minutes where Murray was out there without Jokic, it's a minus 14 net rating in 444 minutes. That's bad. That is a really, really low number, and it's one of the big problems for the Nuggets. It's one of the big problems for how they fundamentally handle their rotation. Denver often runs a 9-man rotation when it really matters. They will run 4 bench guys and the 5 starters, and the 1 starter that staggers is often Jamal Murray. That's the easiest way for them to run it. You put your second best player out there with your bench unit, and you try to make it work. And Denver won 57 games this year doing that. So it's not like it's that crazy. Like, it definitely makes sense. I think that it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with Murray this offseason, as my guy Jeff Morton, who I will also be chatting with in this offseason for sure, will be doing some TV talk as well. Jeff Morton says, side note, any extension talks with Jamal has to factor in the cap going up 10% in the 2025-2026 season when his extension kicks in, but also his availability would be a factor. Both are very, very important for the ongoing kind of what's next discussion, because that's looming. Because on one hand, Murray's a guy that helped you win a championship. He helped you win a championship. First year coming off of an ACL tear. Not usually expected to carry a heavy burden in those situations, but he had a little bit of extra time because he missed the entire previous season and then worked his way back into shape and then played fantastic basketball in the playoffs after that. And then this season happened, and he could never really get off the ground. He wasn't really in a rhythm. The Lakers series was mostly subpar, but saved by the fourth quarter heroics. And like I will say, game 2 and game 5, they'll live in infamy. Game 2, he was horrible. 3 of 16 from the field, figured it out in the fourth quarter, hit one of the most dirty, disgusting shots in Nuggets franchise history. And then game 5, it's coming after that calf strain, played like a warrior. Hit the shot that ultimately sent the Lakers home. Him doing that in like multiple games in the series shows you who he is. It shows you what he's capable of. But the absences and the way that he played against the T-Wolves, including him showing up in game 7, also show exactly who he is too. He is both players. He is all of them. He is an enigma. He is a guy who, like, you got to pay for some of the bad because you're going to get some of the good. And I try to remind people, and have been reminding people on Twitter earlier, that in this conversation of can you actually improve upon Jamal and improve upon what he gives you, you have to decide, like, okay, so which player are you getting? Can that player actually be better than what the Nuggets are getting from Jamal Murray on a consistent basis? Like, why would the Cavs just trade Donovan Mitchell? They're not going to trade Donovan Mitchell for Jamal Murray because Murray is also on an expiring contract, which is the entire reason that they're trading Donovan Mitchell in the first place. Who is saying Andrew Nembhard is better than Jamal Murray? Okay, this is like, people are getting wild, man. People are getting wild. This is Jamal's had so many positive moments for this Nuggets team. He's had so many moments where he has lifted them. You remember back at the bubble, it was Murray, not Jokic, not anybody else, who got the Nuggets back into it, who gave Denver their best moment prior to winning a championship. Murray is also the guy who can struggle, who can be horrible, who can have like a major attitude, especially in the pressers. And there are absolutely, like, he's such a polarizing player right now. Nuggets fans feel like they should blame Murray for not winning the last, like, 3 of the last 4 championships. Like, you win the one that he was healthy, but you'll lose the ones where he's not. And I understand why people are upset, but I understand, like, that you're just not going to get better than him. Like, if you can find a guy that actually makes sense, that would actually make Denver better, that would be able to carry the Nuggets and would not put so much pressure on Nikola Jokic that he would burst, then you let me know. And if you could find that player, then what I'll likely tell you is that Denver can't afford them. Is that Denver doesn't have the draft capital. That they're not going to trade what they have in order to get somebody like that. So my belief is that this is a wake-up call for Jamal Murray. That this past season was him becoming complacent, was that him not showing up in the way that Nuggets fans wanted him to show up. He assumed that he could get it going, that he could find a way, but he never was able to get off the ground because he was unhealthy. Like, he wasn't able to be there physically, and as a result, he wasn't able to be there mentally. So I think where he can be better, he's got to hit the ground running mentally and physically. That's at the beginning of the season. It's time for him to be an all-star out of the gate, in my opinion. I think he has to lift up the second unit for real this time. And Denver can help him out in that. They can actually add a backup center that makes sense with him. They can actually try to put some spacing around him, because the most common lineup that Denver played next to Jamal Murray this year with the bench was Reggie Jackson, Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, and Zeke Naji. I want y'all to tell me, like, you really think that there's a lot of guys that could prop up that group? Really? Are you serious? Like, I know I understand that I am probably biased towards Murray in this situation, but I also think that he was kind of set up to fail with that bench unit. That the young guys in that group, that playing him next to Reggie Jackson, who couldn't play defense, like that playing him next to Zeke Naji, who couldn't play offense, like it just doesn't make sense. So the Nuggets have to put him into a better position to succeed, in my opinion. They've built this team around Joker, and Joker has succeeded. The problem now is that Jamal Murray is now kind of being left out to dry in those situations. So if it were up to me, I would try to bolster the rotation around him a little bit as well, as long as it doesn't take away from what you're doing with Jokic. The Nuggets have another fundamental lineup that they're trying to use for Murray. The other thing that they could do is they could just have him play next to Joker for the entire time and then stagger Porter and then get an actual like bench driver, somebody like a Jordan Clarkson, that you're not going to play that guy next to Murray. You're going to let them go to work. You're going to let some other guys stagger and then play the defensive wings. That would make sense. But I don't think the Nuggets have put Murray in a great position to succeed. I think that Murray is also has not like handled himself that well. So both things can be true. There is nuance involved in this that not enough people are using. Everybody wants to put it on Murray's head and shove him on a stake. That's what they would like to do. I don't think that that is nuanced enough. Could Murray be moved? Maybe. Who knows? I do think that it's Murray's time to shine, and that if he doesn't shine this time, they'll be pretty shaky. But I think that he will. Just kind of being around him and understanding how he ticks and what he's looking for. I really do think he's going to bounce back. And people are going to be looking at this and thinking about these conversations that they're having and wondering, and why do we go so hard on him? It's a lot of pressure to be the second best player on a team that has Nikola Jokic. It's a tough place to be. Spent too much time on Murray there. Let's talk about Porter. What happened for Michael Porter? 81 out of 82 games played. He's been willing to do what the Nuggets have asked him to do, and that's to be a third option. That's fine. That's what the Nuggets have wanted. They've wanted Jokic to be the 1, they've wanted Murray to be the 2, and they want Porter to be the 3. And probably closer to the 4 than to the 2, if I'm being honest. Porter had some passing flashes, some defensive flashes, some driving to the cup flashes, but to me, he is still fundamentally the same player with similar strengths and weaknesses, of course. He's just slightly better at pretty much everything across the board, which is what you would want from a guy like that. You want them to be solid, and he has become solid, to be clear. He was the fundamental difference against the Los Angeles Lakers. They didn't have anyone for him, and he made them pay over and over and over again. The T-Wolves were able to put Jaden McDaniels on him, and that basically shut his water off completely. That is a tough matchup for anybody, but Porter had to be better in that situation. Murray had to be better, clearly. He was not good enough. Porter also had to be better. Just as I talked about Jokic being better. All of the Nuggets stars can take some ownership in the fact that the team failed. It doesn't go on one player. It goes on all of them. It goes on them as a team. Porter did want to assume some responsibility post-game after the Game 7 loss last Sunday night. Obviously, that's a little bit too strong, but he did have 4 games of single-digit points. Because the Wolves were able to put Jaden McDaniels on him, they were able to limit one of Denver's most important keys, one of their most important X factors. And that was a big deal. Here's where he can get better. Fundamentally, when the Nuggets faced the T-Wolves, Porter went back to being a catch and shoot guy. He wasn't really doing a lot of off the dribble stuff. He wasn't able to get free. He can't just be a catch and shoot player. The Nuggets need him. And this will be an extended conversation into the third segment as well. They need him to be more than just a catch and shoot guy. 51.5% EFG percentage on catch and shoot jumpers against the T-Wolves. On pull-up jumpers, Porter's numbers went down. He was at 29.4 effective field goal percentage on pull-up jumpers. That includes 2s and 3s. Usually Porter's great in those situations. It was one of the things that made him such a special mid-range shooter during the regular season. He was not able to get free. And when he did get free, he missed. Those need to go back to being makes in a playoff environment. Even when he's being guarded by tough players, even when he's being guarded by like-sized players, he's got to find ways to create space, got to find ways to be better. I wonder, fundamentally, if Porter and the Nuggets are better off at when he's playing power forward. One of the things that I noticed this year in comparison to last year, Jokic, Porter, Gordon, it was a tremendous net rating when those three shared the floor, especially with the starters, but even with other rotations last year. This year, Jokic, Porter, Gordon, plus 9.7 net rating. Pretty good. The starting lineup as a whole was like plus 13.8, plus 13.9. So what happened to that trio? Well, when Jokic and Porter shared the floor by themselves without Gordon, the Nuggets had a plus 18.9 net rating in 379 minutes, more than doubled in terms of rate. When Jokic and Gordon shared the floor without Porter, plus 21.6 net rating in 250 minutes. That is crazy. Like, those two are what I like to call 3.5s, or what I used to like to call them back in 2021. Now, I think they might both be 4s. I think they might both be different types of 4s, but they're 4s. And playing them together, you can make it work because they're great, because they're really, really good players. But to get the best out of this roster, to get the best out of these players, the Nuggets might need to find more lineups where Jokic and Porter are playing without Gordon, and where Jokic and Gordon are playing without Porter. And the same is true without Jokic. When Porter and Gordon share the floor without Jokic, the Nuggets had a plus 3.1 net rating in 189 minutes. That's pretty good. That's a little bit better than I think a lot of people would expect. And so I think the Nuggets can be a little bit more manipulative with their lineups going forward. That's one thing that I would expect. I don't think the Nuggets have to share, change too much with their group. The individual players just have to be better. And I wonder if that happens with Porter becoming the Nuggets' backup power forward. Peyton Watson moves to the 3, or the Nuggets play Christian Brown, Julian Strawther, and Michael Porter together instead of Peyton Watson. Or the Nuggets play Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, Michael Porter. Christian Brown moves into the starting unit, and Michael Porter's the backup 4. I think that there are ways that the Nuggets can change up their rotation a little bit and make it better. I also think that trying to find Porter trades is kind of folly because he's got a 3-year, $115 million contract. As great as Porter can be, he's like in that 50 to 70 range in terms of top 100 players in the NBA. He is not quite a top 50 player because he's a little bit too limited. He is not outside of the top 70 because he is too valuable. No, Walter, I'm not actually benching him. Like Porter, Gordon, Jokic would still be the starting trio, but Porter would stagger with the second unit instead of Murray. And I think that that might be a better thing for the Nuggets. Might be a better way. If the Nuggets were going to make a major trade, it probably would have to include Porter fundamentally. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think the Nuggets are going to run it back for the most part. The most change that they would have to have is probably letting KCP walk or letting him sign and trade somewhere and get something in return. But that's it. I don't think that Denver's going to change anything too crazy. Don't think they're going to try to do anything too wild. But I do think that this is going to be a very interesting offseason for Porter. I wonder if he can evolve as a secondary handler. I don't know if he's capable of doing it. I don't know if he's capable of making those reads consistently, seeing the floor that consistently. It fundamentally changes his game a little bit. But it would help Denver. It would help the Nuggets in a time where they need secondary ball handling with their starting unit. Might help if it was Porter. It might help if he could do it. We'll see if he can. Let's take another break. When we come back, we are going to chat about, can the Nuggets win another championship with this as the leading trio? That is the fundamental question that everybody has to ask. That is the most important to ask for sure. We'll be right back on Pickaxe and Roll. All right. Final segment, Pickaxe and Roll. Thank you so much for tuning into the show, everyone. Appreciate all the love and support. Happy Mother's Day, or not Mother's Day, Memorial Day if you celebrate. If you don't, happy Monday. Hope you had a good day off, especially here in the States. Okay. Let's ask the fundamental question. Can the Nuggets win another championship with this as the leading trio? Because that is what this is. Aaron Gordon at times might be a better player than Michael Porter. He might even be a more consistent, valuable player than Jamal Murray at times. I think that's a pretty large infraction against Jamal. But the fact is that the money is what tells you the real story here. Denver with Jokic, I think he's making like $50 million. Let me actually look at the numbers here. Next year, Jokic is making $51.4 million. Jamal Murray is making $36 million. Michael Porter is making $35.9. Aaron Gordon making $23.8. Like basically $12 million less. So there's a gap there. And you got to follow the money in this case because the Nuggets know that the cap flexibility is a problem with this trio. As long as the Nuggets have this trio intact, there is a very limited amount of cap flexibility that they have. They will probably never have their non-taxpayer MLE. It's a large chunk of change. It's like 12, 13 million per season. It's a contract that you can hand out to a really solid rotation player, somebody who could start games for you, who could be super, super helpful for most teams. And that is a big piece that they will never have because they are playing Jokic, Murray, and Porter as much as they are. Now, Porter is probably the one guy that's a little bit overpaid there, but I think Denver can still make it work with that trio. Hell, they already did. They already won a championship with this trio as the leading salaries. And you got to understand the fundamental strengths and flaws of what you're dealing with. You got to have a perfectly built team. The fundamental strength of this Jokic, Murray, Porter trio is their offensive versatility, their ability to beat you in a variety of different ways. Jokic could be the main facilitator. He could be the main scorer. He could be a rebounder. Murray can score inside, outside, and in the middle game. Porter, elite three-point sniper, but also an offensive rebounder and can hit the mid-range with the best of them. That is Denver's biggest strength. Their biggest weakness is their defensive versatility. They do not have a lot of ways that they can deploy those three players. KCP and Aaron Gordon are taking on the toughest assignments because asking Jokic to do so, asking Murray to do so, asking Porter to do so is a horrible way to win basketball games. Those guys can't do it. It's on somebody else in order to get it done. And that is a limiting factor. Jokic doesn't have a lot of scheme versatility. Despite the fact that he is a smart player, he's not a mobile player. So you can't really switch a ton and expect to live. You can't really play drop with him consistently because he's not athletic enough to protect the rim. He's got to play at the level, and that's really it when it comes down to playoff caliber defense. You could play the cat and mouse game a little bit, but Murray can also get picked on, and he did get picked on more than anybody in these playoffs. LeBron killed him, and Anthony Edwards killed him. Edwards also killed Porter, and frankly, LeBron also killed Porter, and Anthony Davis also killed Porter. Those guys each had bad defensive playoffs. Jokic was fine. He was limiting, but fine. It wasn't on him that the Nuggets lost defensively. So that's just what you have. That's what you have with this group. And you got to understand that that's probably not changing. The more the Nuggets age, the more they go through their half-life, go on that exponential or the logarithmic curve, the more it's going to look like a parabola, the more it's going to look like a downturn. And as Denver kind of loses their athletic edge, it's going to be fascinating to see how they evolve. Is it reasonable to ask Murray and Porter to bounce back in a playoff environment next year? Yes, it is. I think Murray will be healthier. I think he's still well within his prime. He's still in his years where he can be better, he can learn, he can evolve, do all those things. The same goes for Porter. Porter, I think, is 25, 26? He's not on death's door. He's going to find more ways to improve. He's going to use this as motivation. The Nuggets, to their own admission, got a little bit fat and happy off the championship, didn't have the same hunger, didn't have the same desire, urgency, the way that they probably needed to. I think that'll be back, or at least you got to hope it will be back. And with it, I think that Murray and Porter will play better going forward, at least in next year. But there is a world where the answer is no to the question of whether the Nuggets can win another championship with this as their leading trio. And if that is the case, here's what I'm going to say. It's not surprising. The NBA is very much filled with parity right now. The NBA is more talented than it's ever been. The playoffs are a war of attrition. Injuries can happen to anybody. Look at where the Boston Celtics are at right now after having not faced Jimmy Butler in the playoffs, where Donovan Mitchell missed several games. Jared Allen missed the entire playoffs or the entire series against the Celtics. And then Tyrese Halliburton went out for these last two games. The leading players for each of the three teams in the Eastern Conference had to bow out, and it allowed the Boston Celtics to kind of get an opportunity to go to the championship. They probably would have gone anyway because they're a talented team. But the most important thing that people can realize here is that championships are not written in stone, or future championships are not written in stone. Once you do win a championship, that can never go away. Nobody can ever take that away from Denver. And Nuggets fans should remember that. How many franchises have never won a championship before? It's a lot more than you think. Minnesota, for as much as they were very excited about beating the Nuggets, they're not going to win a championship this year. That's a problem. They thought that they could get out of it. Now they're down 3-0 to Dallas. If they lose next, they're out. It is not written in stone that teams will win a future championship. Now, I think that the Nuggets can reload with this group, but it's possible that they don't. It's possible that they try and it doesn't work. It's possible that they make a trade. Hell, let's say they trade Jamal Murray for, I don't know, who's even a good fit at this point? Because I've seen a lot of the trades that people are recommending. Oh yeah, just trade Jamal Murray and Michael Porter for Luka. That's the one that we want. Why the hell would Dallas do that? They already have Kyrie. Why would they trade Luka? What are we doing? Donovan Mitchell's not going to the Nuggets. I don't know who the name is. Maybe you trade Porter. Maybe break up his salary. Try to get another pretty solid starter and then improve the bench. That could be understandable. There's just a lot of things that are always going to be working against the Nuggets, that are working against every team. The money is kind of constantly trying to push Denver back towards the middle. They want, the CBA basically wants the Nuggets to fail. It's what they want. I don't know what Denver's going to do. I have a recommendation, and my recommendation is to stick it out another year, to sign Murray to an agreeable contract. I don't think he deserves a max. The 4-year, $204 million max extension. I don't think he deserves that. He hasn't made an All-Star game yet. But he's also won a championship. And I think he, in his mind, could say that he's reached heights that some of these other guys have never reached. And so you're going to get some interesting arguments on both sides of that. But it'll be very, very interesting to see where those things lie. Those conversations. The fact is this. The Nuggets have the 28th pick in the draft this year. 28th pick. If they hit on that, and if they sign a really solid backup center, and if they trade for a solid backup point guard, and they re-sign KCP, then they might have won Game 7 against the T-Wolves, and they might have gone through the Dallas Mavericks, and they would probably match up pretty well against the Boston Celtics. That same thing could happen next year. Denver gets a little bit of rest. Their stars play a little bit better. And the Nuggets get back to a championship caliber mode. Whether it actually happens or not, that remains to be seen. But I do think the Nuggets need to apply pressure to themselves. Denver can't let this moment go to waste. And they have to be sure that every move that they make from here is in the best interest of winning another championship. It's not winning 3 of the next 6 or 4 of the next 7, being a dynasty. It's winning 1 more championship. And then you try to win another one after that. But it's all about winning the next one, in my opinion. I'm very curious to see how the Nuggets handle that. I'm very curious to see how the Nuggets stars handle that, because it's a different caliber of mode. The Nuggets have not reached it yet. Can they get back to it? We'll see. Folks, that is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at Bet Online and number 38. I'm Ryan Blackburn. Make sure to go read all of my stuff at Mile High Sports. I'm doing season and review content over there as well. Did the point guards and point guard season in review. Tonight, I'm going to write the shooting guard season in review, which includes KCP, Justin Holiday, Julian Strawther, and we'll see about more. Should be interesting to see. Looking forward to hearing your opinions on this one. Looking forward to hearing your opinions on the next one, which will be all about the young guys. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit the like button on the way out. I'll see you guys again on Wednesday.